how much coffee.
Wow, like I didn't realize how tired I looked until.
No, you don't. Okay, maybe a little.
But we made it to book. This is 4.
Yes, yes.
We're on number 4, which is a Chinese story from I don't know when it's from.
I haven't read the preface
Yeah,
yet.
it's pre-1700s. We're still really
Ancient
old.
times.
Yeah, and it said it's from China, and apparently it's really popular in China.
We haven't stated the title yet.
Oh yes, it's it's called Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and it's another epic. So
But I like it.
this
though.
one's good. This one so far is the best one.
I have to agree. Some parts do get tedious because of the names of the generals and counselors
Right.
and whatnot. But just overall, it's very well written and executed, I think.
I think so too. Well, I guess so. It's an epic story about after the Han Dynasty. These different people are trying to reclaim all the land. So it's basically Chinese Game of Thrones, where the river cuts China in half, because that's a big deal. Yeah, they keep mentioning the river, and so there's people of the north, people of the south, and basically the people along the river, and so you have your Game of Thrones.
Yeah, no. I was thinking the same thing when you stated that, because although I have not watched all of Game of Thrones, I have seen like the first part, and it was very reminiscent of that show.
So people, you'll introduce a character, and then never get attached because they will die, and then there's a couple of your main characters, and then you have your. At this point, I kept thinking there was 3 main generals. Liu Bei,
Mm-hmm.
or Louis Bei.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's Cao Cao,
Mm-hmm.
and then at first I thought I knew Dong Zhou wasn't going to make it very long. But then I thought, oh, it's going to be Lu Bu, so it's going to be 3 the whole story. No, boom, Lu Bu's dead. So they bring in Yang Shan, or Yang Shane, or whatever his name is. I was like, okay, so he must be the next. Nope, boom, dead. So they bring in Sun Si, and I was like, oh, he's related to the guy who wrote Art of War. Boom, dead. But now we have his son, and then, then we had Lu Bao for a while. Nope, dead. I guess everyone is dead, except for
The 3 sworn brothers,
the 3 sworn brothers.
and then Cao Cao, who's been referred to as the traitor of the empire. So he's not a yellow scarf rebel. He's just a rebel who people think is trying to take over the Han
Right.
dynasty from Emperor Xian. I can't pronounce his name. I mean, but the young emperor.
Right. So the story starts off with and it's all like, it's mostly factual. There are some made up characters, but the story is mostly factual. So it starts off with the Yellow Scarf Rebellion, and that's where you kind of get introduced to some of the main characters like Liu Bei and Cao Cao. And then over time, even Liu Bei and Cao Cao come together, then they split apart, and now they're like trying to fight each other again. But there's a lot of just military strategy.
Not to mention backstabbing and intrigues. That's been very fascinating.
I feel like I'm making it sound too complicated, but it is really fascinating. And once you get used to all the names, like there's so many names, there's almost too many names. But what helps me is like, since we couldn't find like a physical version, so reading it on an iPad, I'll highlight the name and Google it, and there's like I said, it's so popular in China that there's like a game or like fan art or something to each of these characters.
That's what you
So it
told
puts
me.
an image to these different people. So, except for Liu Bei, they in the book, whoever wrote this version, apparently like it's like the victor gets to tell the history kind of story, like that saying. So whoever This is the
Always
version.
that way.
This is the version that's stuck around through time. So whatever person wrote it was not a fan of him. So they always make him seem very. They describe him basically like an orangutan. They say his earlobes touch his shoulders, his hands go past his knees. Like they just describe him as this long fate. Like they don't like him at all, and they describe him in just like these really unflattering terms. But you look at the fan art, and he's like this powerful looking soldier guy. So they didn't take him that far. But.
Well, I was also Guanyu, one of the Swan brothers. He is sort of physically portrayed in not a negative light, but like in a fierce, almost evil way, like with his red eyes and whatnot. But he is supposedly very upstanding and you know.
But like this is like so they took the actual versions of like you can't deny what he did. So when he went to like the one city to save the people, like you can't deny that in the history. But whoever wrote this don't like the three brothers, so they make them so awful, like physically. But speaking of him, I did something. I came across something, and apparently last week there used to be in China a giant statue of Guanyu at this like museum or something, and the people decided it was an eyesore, so they're taking it apart and they're moving it to some other location. But right now, all they've gotten done is the head. So there's this giant statue of this war god without a head at this place in this little museum in China. And I thought that was
like now.
this was the date. The article was written last week. So I thought that was really interesting.
Okay, so I have to admit, I have found myself, I am quite attached to the three Swan brothers because I just really like them, so I find myself rooting for them each time I read about their escapades, I guess.
Yes, and as much as the writer hated Liu Bei, I think I'm rooting for them too. He seems like the most honorable, and like they keep lifting Cao Cao up, but he does some shady stuff. Like
he has some dark undercurrents about him. I mean, I guess they all do, but he's unable to keep it in check.
It's just pretty neat how he manages to get so many people to follow him. Like people just like him at the time, and he is some of the coolest generals, I think. Like what was Dian Li? Because there's Li Dian and then there's Dian Li, and Dian Li was the one. He didn't make it. I thought he was going to make it further, but he didn't. But he's the one that, as they were attacking him right before he died, he started grabbing the bodies and using them to fend off the attackers, just using dead bodies. And I thought that was neat.
Oh, speaking of, it's very violent.
Yeah.
Each time the head was cut off, I felt my own neck. I mean, I don't know. It's like it's very very gruesome. Do you remember the part? Okay, my pronunciation is really off, so please forgive us.
Yeah, I'm butchering the names. I'm doing my best.
I always pronounced it Lu Bai, but you said what are the smart?
Liu Bei. Oh well, done is done.
It lasted for a while. Just leave it.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sort of like a nice backdrop behind you, though. See how it sort of just cascades down? Do you remember when he took shelter at a farm, and then the farmer or owner there wanted to
I told Colby about this part.
serve him, but he didn't have any meat.
He was supposed to be a renowned hunter, but he couldn't.
That's
he couldn't
right.
catch anything.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, he did end up serving Liu Bei and his soldiers and compatriots meat, but it was the hunter's wife. Wow.
That was so neat. But I like some dark stuff, so.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I don't know. I just found myself. I had to give myself a moment to really let that settle in.
But that's some Game of Thrones stuff right there. I mean, I guess Game of Thrones. This came out first, so it should make the analogy the other way. But or like the Cow's general, the Zian Dane. He was the one that he was galloping away, and the arrow came and shot him in the eye.
Yes.
So he rips it out and goes, "This eye belongs in my body," so he eats it.
I remember that too. Yes,
like,
that
there's
was
some wild stuff in this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really liking this one so far. Like,
and yeah.
Arabian Nights had its like ups and downs, but this one's pretty consistently engaging.
Yes, and the poems. I mean, although they are very similar in some aspects, this one doesn't get tied down with the long poems. I mean, there are a few, but they just they don't go on nonsensically almost.
And these poems, to me, though, they actually mention what's happening in the story, whereas the other poems in like Genji and Arabian Nights, they just seem like they were in there. But these actually tie together, so they'll like mention a story about a person, and then the poem will tie it all together, like an epic song or something. So these make more sense.
Oh, I agree. And I'm sure you remember, I don't know, Ji Ping, the physician?
Is he the one that took the oath?
He bit off his finger.
Yeah, to mean to take the oath, he bit off his fingers. So when they caught him in his treacherous games, they were like, "Oh, you want to lose fingers?" So they cut off all his fingers before they killed him. This is crazy. It's a very violent story.
Yeah, but I am surprisingly really enjoying it. I didn't think that I would like it as much.
Especially starting out. It took a minute to get into it. But it also took a minute to get all the names. But once you get... There's probably about, at any given moment, 10 names before they kill someone off and they add someone else. But you kind of... If you latch on to about 10 names at a time, you can follow the story very easily. And every once in a while I have to do the Google thing. Also, the Google thing... It'll tell you if it's an important person pretty immediately or not, because if their picture pops up pretty quick, then you know they're going to be a main character, and if they don't, then it gets swept under the... They probably die very quickly. A lot of beheadings. Everyone loses their head.
Or fingers. But yeah, starting off, I found that I really couldn't get bogged down with the names because, they come and go so quickly.
Right.
But as you said, there are a few mainstays so far, and I am just hoping that none of the Sworn Brothers will be killed off because I really like reading about them. But of the three, Zhang Fei, he's probably the most hot-headed one.
He is.
Very so they have to keep him in check. But but they're just also loyal to each other, and I just love that.
Well, they do have that oath that if one of them dies, they all have to immediately kill themselves. So.
But there were a few instances where, like Liu Bei, when he thought that he was trapped, he almost took his own life, but then the others stopped him.
They stopped him.
Yeah. So. Oh, and what's that story about the Taoist saint? Who was the one who didn't want the townspeople to be believe him? Do you remember he was the one who called down the rain and then...
Oh, yeah.
I vaguely remember that story.
Yeah, so we're starting to get into some like mystical aspects of it. Have you met Water Mirror yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the easiest name to remember.
Wait. Say it again.
Water Mirror. He has two names. They call him Water Mirror. And they're Sleeping Dragon. Okay, yeah, we're getting to some they're like hermits who are very learned and they live in the woods, and he was one of them, and he was part of the Sun Sea thing, I believe, where he didn't want the townspeople to believe in this religious nonsense, so he was like, if you can't call the rain, I'm going to kill you. So they tie him up and right before they behead him, the rain falls, and he goes,
Yes.
"Ha, I get it," and then he was like, "No, you don't," and then he kills him anyway.
Yes, I remember that, but I must have forgotten the name. But yes, yeah, that was really fun. But yeah, it's a very good story so far. It's one of my favorites, surprisingly, so far that we have read
Oh, yeah.
from the.
Oh yeah, definitely out of the
Ancients.
four, the 4 books we've been doing this for a year and a half, and out of the 4, this one's so far the best.
I honestly didn't think that I would like it.
Yeah, but even you haven't got to Zhao Zilong yet. He's like an unofficial brother. He's one of Liu Bei's. He's like the 4th general. And
I have come across that name, but I don't
He
remember
doesn't-
much about him.
You will. He does something, and it's so cool. Like, there's a bunch of like TV shows and movies based on this. I think. Well, there's at least 2 TV shows. And, like, I'd be really interested to find it because like it's if they follow the story, it's a really neat story. It's pretty crazy. What was I gonna, there's something else. Oh, the prehistory stuff. Even that, like prior to this, there was that whole preface thing where it went through like the Chinese history leading up to this moment to try to give you some background, but it went back like hundreds of years, and like just some of the stories that they had in that was fascinating. Like there was one guy who his dad was a great emperor, but his son was like just slothful and like just
Treacherous.
yeah. And so he married this woman who was like, she was beautiful, but she was evil, and they built a giant pool of liquor underground so they could just swim in their liquor. And then there was another general who was trying to take over the city, so he hid. He was trying to scare the people as they attacked. So he covered his horses in tiger skins so they looked like tigers raging towards like the history of China. Like there was really just, I don't want to say like out there, but like just really like great legends and stories and stuff. Like really, really neat stuff.
It's certainly entertaining for sure. Are you surprised that the eunuchs no longer play an important part? Because it seems like the story was started off with them, like the 10 eunuchs.
Yeah.
But now it's.
Well, that's what kicked it off. So the eunuchs overthrew the empire, and that just what started this whole chain of events. So now there's not one main leader anymore, and now they're just trying to reclaim and find out who's gonna take over these lands in China. But
Fascinating so far. Quite fascinating.
yeah, I guess it's harder to, because at least with the other stuff, we could complain about it so hard, but it's just really good. And I don't know how to convey that. No one's probably gonna read it, but if you're into like epics or
This is the one to read.
Game of Thrones, so far this is the one.
I definitely like the latter part better than the beginning, just because you're still trying to find your footing and figuring out what's going on and who's
Right.
doing what. But once you sort of get the mainstay and characters down, it's much better.
Oh, yeah.
But did you ever get frustrated with all of the names and military strategy? I mean, it can get a little frustrating, but it doesn't bog the whole story down because it moves so quickly.
Right. Well, I mean, that just reminds me of like, I want to say it again, this is going to get annoying, but watching Game of Thrones, they would do that. They would talk about what the different characters were doing and what they needed to do. And then there would be these battle scenes, and then there would be these scenes of talking and plotting, and then there would be battle scenes, and that's exactly what this story is.
I'm wondering if it's any way based off of this.
Oh, it's got, this has to
Yeah.
be the precursor for all the modern epic
Yeah.
war stories or something. This has to be more. It's just surprised I never heard of it until this moment. Like say, especially since it's so big, like people in China. It's my understanding that I read somewhere that like people in China still claim lineages to some of these people. Like it's such a big deal. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, I'm completely ignorant about a lot of things, but my understanding, it's a huge story there. So it's just surprised me that I've never heard of it until now.
I can definitely see why. I never thought that it would be as entertaining as it is. But then again, I mean, yeah. So I guess there's a reason why it's stayed around for as long as it has.
I mean, the style, it is a little dated. I mean, you can tell, but it's not. Whoever translated it did it in such a well way, in a very good way,
Yeah.
a very readable way. I got this. So we'll keep going and see if we still feel this way. It's almost hard to talk about this one because it's just fascinating and it just should be read. I mean, I get why this one's definitely in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Where the other ones so far, well, I can't speak for the whole story, but the other stories so far, they were there for like historical reasons, I feel. Or like Arabian Nights was such a big story, and then Genji was the first novel. But this one, it feels it's also in there because it's just a story that should be read. But then again, the next chapter, all the characters could die, so who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen?
Well, hopefully this will have a better ending than Game of Thrones. I mean, according to what I've heard.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah. So,
Gosh, I mean, I can't wait to find out who is left standing and what really happens. Huh. Okay.
2 months later.
Well, did you finish?
Yes, mostly.
Mostly.
Yes, I mean, just like towards the very end, I just started. I mean, I read, but I skimmed too.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, I did finish, but by the last chapter, the 120th chapter, I didn't want to read it. I was so done. But okay, but I guess I need to back up. Did you like it?
I did until I got towards the end.
Yeah.
I feel that it got really, I mean, just very repetitive, and that it was almost just unnecessary. Like, just, I mean, do you get my? All right, maybe that's not a good way to put it. Maybe I should just say that it was a lot longer than it should have been.
Yeah. Well, see, I liked it. I thought so far out of the 4 we've read, this one's the best one.
I definitely agree.
This one's hands down the best one. And even just as a book, I thought it was, if I just like picked it up, I thought it was really good. But you're going through the whole thing, and me not knowing, I guess if I knew Chinese history, I wouldn't have been thrown for the loop. But you're going through, and then you kind of like start picking people you like, and then you have, it basically turns down to the 3, like Wu, Wei, and Shu, and at the very end, none of them. Someone just swoops in the last chapter and just takes the whole thing, and I didn't even want to read that last chapter. I didn't want to read it. I didn't even care at that point. I was done. and plus all the people that like did these great things, so like Liu Bei and even like Cao Cao and Sun Quan, like even though they were opposing each other, like they were all, well, Cao Cao was a little vicious, but you know, Liu Bei and especially Sun Quan were like morally upright, and like even though they were warriors, they tried to do the right thing, even sometimes even if they did the wrong thing. And then their kids take over, and they're just like greedy, sniveling little brats. And it was the last 10.
Don't you think that it sort of fell apart by that point? I don't know. It just the book was solid up until that point for me.
But maybe that's kind of the point. Like it's a story of generations at that point.
I could definitely see why it has such a relevant place in Chinese literary history.
Right.
But I'm just surprised that I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Did you?
As I was reading it and looking up people, there's tons of video games. Apparently, like, there's various versions of these video games.
I remember you telling me that.
And then someone was like, near the end, that Dang A, I think that was his name. They were like, why isn't he in one of the games? And they're like, oh, well, then they'd have to add these other characters because that's who he fought and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
I also read that it's people with like 1,000 different characters, and I believe it because it got really overwhelming there, but I really enjoyed it when I could really focus on the characters that played a prominent role in the story,
Right.
but then they were all killed off or died. I may or may not have cried when Guan Yu, Liu Bei, and Zhang Fei died.
yeah, like
Oh,
I was
yeah.
going through, and then God, you died. And I'm like, wait, where is this going? Because they have the pack, you know, and then they died in such like weak ways in a way. So like, it wasn't like in a big like. Okay, so you think with like a television show, if you have a big character, what's going to happen is there's going to be a big battle, or they're going to make the big sacrifice. And Ganyu just got captured, and they're like, nah, behead him. And like, it was just so, or like even Cao was like, oh, he was sick. And Liu
Yes,
Bei
that-
was sick as well, wasn't he?
Yes, but just suddenly too. And the first one just really took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting it, and the other members may have actually heard me throughout the house because I was like, no! I just wasn't ready for him to be killed off.
I didn't
And
see it coming. I mean, I hate to keep making the references to Game of Thrones, but this had to have been highly influential to that show because I didn't see. Well, okay, granted, it does span what 60 years total.
yes, I think so.
So if they're 30 when they start and they're 60 by then, and then they add the other people like Zhu Lang who comes in, because especially when Liu Bei died and Cao dies, like where is this going? Like where could this possibly go?
Mhm.
But then Zhu Lang takes over. I was like, I like him. Like at first I was like, why are we introducing more people? And then I was like, oh, this guy's just too smart for his own. He just knows everything. But by the time and it seemed like such an aside to the story, but when he's in the mountains fighting the tribe,
The main tribes or something?
that got tedious, but at the same time seemed like such an interesting little aside. But I thought they were gonna bring Mang back, but he never showed back
I
up.
actually enjoyed that portion just because I grew so attached to him, and I just loved reading about him and his political and military intrigues with his foes and his enemies, and he always won. Well, he mostly won, I should say. I actually highlighted something about him, but I can't seem to find it now.
But especially with Zhu Lang and all the other advisors, it almost became a story less about the people in power. So it started off where they made the 3 territories. Because the story starts off, and it's just tribes basically coming together, cities coming together, and then they make the 3 states.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 3 states go to war, and so by the middle, that's when you get the Wu, Wei, and Shu that takes over the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time that's established, the generals just kind of naturally become the leaders, so Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Quan. But after that point, the children might actually be the emperor, but it's the advisors that have all the power.
Right.
It's Zhu Lang that has the power, and what's his name? Jiaku, or the Sima Yi. Oh, he wasn't bad, but his kids.
Yeah, they were quite.
I liked how his one son died. Another one of those just he's this great warrior. He's vicious and a bad dude, but a good warrior. But he has the mole in his face, and so he has the surgery, and then he gets mad, and his eye pops out, and that's what kills him. And he got a letter or something. It was how people died in this thing.
Yeah.
They were either beheaded or it was just random.
there were actually a lot of beheadings. It's one of the bloodiest books.
So many.
But yes, I mean, I guess like even really bad news from the front or something would just put someone under. But I found the quote that I really liked about, I can't say his name, Zhu Lang?
I just said it's Zhu Lang.
All right.
But I got as phonetically close as I could in my head.
But he was described as the man who appears like a god and disappears like a demon.
Right.
And I just loved that so much. I just really liked the portion about him. But of course, when all of the main characters died, I didn't lose interest, but I just didn't find the story as engaging.
Right. I definitely had that thought where I was like, where is this going?
Mhm.
Because there were so many chapters left.
Mhm.
And then even Zhu Lang dies. I'm like, okay, how are we gonna keep doing this? And it just kind of, at that point, I did read somewhere that the book is 70% historical
Mhm.
fact and 30% fiction.
Mhm.
So there's only, I guess if it's historical, there's only so much, like when a person dies in real life, it's not always in battle, and it's not always at this like big moment. It's something small, like what was it? Was it Cal Ren? The general who got the letter and was so mad he just fell over. Like,
yes, that's one of the instances.
so that's life though, I guess. So there's only so much if these are historical people, when they went, you can't really change that. So I guess that's why it was so.
Mhm. So from what I understand, the book basically starts off when the Han Emperor abdicates, and then the three warlords fight to try to gain control.
Right, and then they build the states, and then
The adventure starts.
yeah, I don't think the states were really like as prominent. Like they had their groupings, so like you knew like Cao Cao's group, but the states they didn't start mentioning as much about Wei as much until I felt like later, once the states were firmly established, and once they were established, that it just became a power grab at that point. It wasn't.
Until the end, I just really thought that it was just a military history of how to restore the Han dynasty.
Right.
But it really didn't turn out that way.
No.
And I guess the reason why I was so upset about the main characters being killed or dying off, some of the ones that you mentioned, was that I just was really hoping in my heart of hearts that that they would be the ones to, make it all happen.
Right, and that's how we've grown accustomed to stories, though. That's not how history is. So.
Or even real life, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I actually really, really enjoyed it.
I did too.
But like the other epics that we have already read, I feel that it probably didn't need to be as long as it is.
Right.
Just because there's only so much military history that you can just relate over and over.
Right.
But I was really surprised how much I liked it because just stating it just superficially, it doesn't seem like it would be that intriguing or even engaging, but it is.
It really was. It really was. I really enjoyed it. Every time someone died, I did think of you though, because they'd always have the poems.
Yes.
So when I was reading, if I saw, like in the bottom of my vision, if I saw it breaking, sliding, I was like, oh, someone's about to go.
Yeah.
Except for the one poem. Do you remember the poem about the fog?
I think
It was a huge poem in the middle of the story about fog.
I
And
remember
it just
that.
never seemed to stop. It went on and on and on.
Well,
Such
compared
a
to what we've
weird-
had in the past, I didn't mind that.
It was such a weird thing to insert. But I guess on this river, the fog is that bad. But some of their little tactics were neat. Or like just pulling some of that for going through life. Just how smart they were.
Mhm.
Like how they extol the arrows with the boat and stuff. Just little
Yeah.
things. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I even went back when I got done, and I kind of skimmed through the early. Once I saw once I was really familiar with the name, because by the end you're not trying to learn everyone
Mhm.
and see how it kind of started, and then remembering, oh yeah, that Dong guy barely made it, or I almost forgot. I had to look up who it was, but Lu Bu, who was such a prominent general at first,
Mhm.
died so early.
Mhm.
It's weird to think about.
It got tedious for me when I had to once all of the prominent characters were killed or died. I didn't enjoy having to relearn who was who
Right.
to sort of get a hold on the story again.
Or once
That got tedious.
once you did, too, some of them were easy. So like Gan Yu and Zhang Fei.
Mhm.
Yeah, once they're kids, that was easy to follow.
Mhm.
Super easy.
Mhm.
But then they get killed, and it's just like, okay, I guess we're and then the names were so. The states were Wei Wu Shu, but Zhang Wei was for Shu.
Mhm.
He wasn't Wei, and then there was another one that their names just made them confused, or like the sons.
Mhm.
They had someone in like each state that was prominent, so it just got confusing of who was where and doing what.
I'm just really surprised though that I was not even familiar with it until we came upon it in this book. Since I also read that it is it's as relevant to Chinese history as Shakespeare is to English, and I just was really surprised.
And the more I kind of got looking into it, it's very prominent in that culture and in that literary tradition and stuff. So, but hopefully you liked it a little bit, because the next one.
It's another 1,000 page.
Well, I looked into it a little bit more. Let's find a little page here. So the next one is the water margin, which apparently is the Chinese Robin Hood,
Oh,
but it's written by the same guy.
okay, so hopefully it will be as interesting. So it's
Oh.
another 1,000 page epic?
Yeah, so be on the lookout in February.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Get started now. But yeah, but since I mean, granted the names were hard to follow, but the story and the plot were, even though like it did, the old writing though, it's gonna do that because it's like Charles Dickens. He kept like writing chapters just to get paid, so like there was no television, so it's gonna be long and windy like that. So hopefully Water Margin is just as good.
Hopefully. Were you surprised that, I was at first overwhelmed by the number of characters.
Right.
When I first started off, I was really worried because I didn't know how I was going to make it through the book, trying to not memorize, but at least keep track of who was who.
Yeah.
But it became a little more manageable, I think, as the prominent players came forth, and then you could.
Yeah, kind of.
But then.
Kind of latched onto a couple of key people, and
Mhm.
everyone else I didn't focus on as hard. So as long as I had that group core for each group, I could follow it.
Mhm.
But there were so many. So
Yes.
many.
Well, as I said, like 1,000 characters. Where is my? Yeah, so it has a total of 800,000 words and nearly 1,000 dramatic characters, mostly historic, which I didn't know. Yeah, it is it's among the most beloved works of literature in East Asia.
I can see that.
So.
I did like the magic sprinkled in too. Like it wasn't all
Yes.
serious. So like there was the guy who drew the dragon and pulled his liver out,
Mm.
pulled the liver out of the picture, or the tribe leader's brother who had like the rivers that like knew how to cure, like the rivers that if you drank it like rotted your skin or whatever. There was a lot of little magic sprinkled throughout, which I thought
It was very mystical too. It was very well done for the type of book that it is.
Right. It felt like Game of Thrones. The Game of Thrones had the magic and the characters getting killed off. The ending that people hated, like
well, we're both not pleased with the ending either.
Game of Thrones had to be influenced by this. It had to have been.
Oh, I agree. I have not watched all of Game of Thrones, but when I started reading it, that's exactly what came to my mind.
And it was episodic, so like the different sections, every like 10 chapters or so could have been like a different story arc or season. If it wasn't, it had to influence other fantasy and epic writers throughout history. And I just don't know how I never knew about this thing.
Oh, I know. That's what I was thinking too.
So it was written, what, 1500? 1-5. It was set in 200 AD, but I think it was written in 1500. So that's a lot of time. Should have known Cao Cao was about to go though, because he was losing his mind, and he was just killing everyone left and right. So like the mystic guy that pulled the liver, or like reached in and grabbed the fish from across the world. So you have this powerful dude that's trying to help you, and you still want you to prove, and he's like, "Nah, kill him." And so then he gets sick, and the doctor comes, the same doctor who took Guanzhong's arm, sliced it open, scraped the bone, and Guanzhong's just chilling, like no pain at all. And he's like, "Oh, you're the best doctor? Kill him." And like he just kept killing everybody before he died.
He just seemed very well, I guess as a general, you almost had to really be on alert and like not
When they wrote this though, it's interesting that they made Lu Bao so noble and moral, but described him as like this hideous guy. And yet Cao Cao was so beautiful and yet so like vicious. It was an interesting. Couldn't tell whose side the writer was on by that point, but it almost like he was on Lu Bao's side. But he's like, well, I got to make him a little bad, so I can write this in 1500.
Well, you can't have it all.
But yeah. So next, in 2 weeks or so, we'll finally be done with At Night All Blood is Black. So that's, be on the lookout for that in 2 weeks.
And then again,
the Water Margin.
2 months. 2 months. Have you read anything else about it?
The Water Margin?
Yeah.
I pulled it up last night. It starts with a poem.
I hope it's not one of those.
It's a short little poem.
Okay.
These
Go
little
on
intro
and
poem.
on.
I'm interested. I'm looking forward to start it. I need to pace myself better than when I did with this one.
Yeah, me too. I think my brain is fried from having read so much, but I was also gonna say I'm not a fan of footnotes, especially after the Arabian Nights. So I'm hoping that the next one is not.
The version I found it looks, it's just a PDF version of a book that was scanned in.
Well, I actually can't wait to see how that book is, since we enjoyed The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. How would you rate it out of 5 stars?
So all in all, given how historically relevant it has been, and just I'd have to give it a 5.
For me, it's not a solid 5,
Right.
but it's really close.
I mean, like, yeah, if this was published last week, I don't know if I'd give it a 5, but since is what it is, and it's still so readable, so many years later,
Well, he killed off my favorite character, so I can't give it 5 stars.
Who's your favorite?
I really love the directing instructor who became Prime Minister, Zhu Lang. Zhu Lang, yeah. I fell in love with him, just for his moral rectitude and just his intrigues. I was just swept away.
He would capture people and then let everyone go and be like, remind them how good we are.
Well, but it worked in their favor though. So he, and I thought that it got almost out of hand, but he obviously knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So when he was killed, I said, okay, that's it, I'm done.
Did you notice how often every time they did something, it was always 7 miles?
Yes. It's like 7 or 10.
7
Okay.
miles. It was
Mostly 7 though.
sometimes it was 3, sometimes it was 10, but they always 7 miles. I don't. Oh, another little weird thing that I found. Remember the guy that was 8 cubits tall? He was mentioned for like a sentence and never showed back up.
There was one who was 9. Do you remember him?
I looked up cubits to feet. 12 feet tall.
What? 12? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I tried to take some notes, but it was just so much that
Oh, speaking of good quotes, when the lips are gone, the teeth are cold. Or when Zhang Wei realized that he was in a trap, he looks around and he goes, "Oh, it's but a picture of a cake." That's what I'm saying now.
I'm just gonna have to keep those in mind.
That cake thing, that's me.
Oh,
Well,
but
see-
I'm really glad we read it.
Did too. See you in a couple weeks.
Yes. Yeah.